that was about 5 years old. So fortunately now we're in the process of creating a new 5 to 10 year long-term capital project needs, but we review that to see what needs to be done. And obviously as you're getting towards the end of a 5-year projection, it's not as accurate as you might have imagined from capital projects before. Trying to project what a cost will be in 5 years is always a fun challenge, as well as sometimes things either don't degrade as fast as you thought they would, so hey, we can get some more years out of this, and sometimes, as we had to do with the GMS parking lot this year, they went a little faster and you end up moving up the timeline on those. Then we also take time to just review it from different angles. Does this make sense from a department perspective, from a building perspective? Does this make sense from a grant perspective? Am I aligning our expenditures with the total revenue that we're getting in? We look at things like by object. So do the salaries make sense? Do our services make sense? Or do our services seem high? Why do they seem high? And then all the way down to an account number level. What have you been doing over the last 4 or 5 years in this account? Is this something that we're going to be continuing to do, or has this been taken in by a different account area? So we try to look at it from different angles to make sure we're getting maximizing every single possible dollar we can. Really quickly, again, to just review, we have the 8 major funds for the district: the education fund, the operations and maintenance fund, debt service fund, transportation fund, retirement fund, capital projects fund, working cash, and tort. And on the future slides, you'll hear that we focus specifically on what we call the operating funds, and that's going to be your education fund, your operations and maintenance fund, your transportation fund, your retirement fund, and your tort fund. And to briefly review why that is, things like debt service are pretty straightforward. You have a mortgage, the county levies how much you need for your mortgage, and it's just a straight in and straight out. Working cash kind of acts as an emergency savings account, so it's not very easy to spend. You're not really supposed to be spending money out of it at all. It's just supposed to be accessed in times of emergencies. Capital projects are for big capital projects that come down the pipeline. We're still working on some of that. So those are the big reasons why those you don't really talk a lot about. So to kind of put some of this in perspective, I know we saw this last time, but again, the big driving factor of expenditures in the district is our education fund at 77% of our total expenditures. Operations and maintenance is at 7%. We're unique as a district just due to our large debt obligations to have debt service be our second largest expenditure. Then you have transportation, retirement, and tort. And tort, just as a quick review, the tort fund is essentially our workers' compensation insurance, property and casualty insurance for the district. So as I said, we sometimes take a look at the budget by object. We find that to be pretty helpful as well to know what exactly we're buying. So in this case, we're projecting about 61% in salaries and about 13.5% in benefits. Services is our next biggest purchase at 12.57%. The reason why that one is so high is, and we'll talk more about this in the coming slides, but services covers everything like our contractual night custodial services, our transportation services, and things like our outplaced, some of our services that we contract with for speech language pathology and other special education needs. Supplies are at 5%. Capital goods, these are going to be anything that by nature are $2,000 or more in cost. Tuition other is at 6%, and that's a growing number for our district. And then finally, non-capitalized goods is 0.19%. So to just quickly discuss some of the assumptions that we had when we built this budget, and I want to emphasize this was as of 30 days ago. So even over the last 30 days, some things can change, but I want to emphasize again, there will be a point later this year where we will amend the budget for any things that we need to do, such as the ongoing contract negotiations. So at that time, we knew for fiscal year 19, we had some additional tier funding purchases. So we adopted a budget in fiscal year 19. We found out about evidence-based funding, and then we made decisions on things like staffing, curriculum purchases, and one-to-one technology initiatives. So in the next slide, as we compare the fiscal year 19 budget to the fiscal year 20 budget, you'll see some jumps. A lot of that is due to things that weren't originally budgeted for in the first budget last year due to the additional tier funding. Overall, we also have increased benefits costs. Our medical HMO decreased 4.5%, but unfortunately our PPO and high deductible health plan increased 7.9%. That led to a net increased cost to the district of almost $100,000. Workers' compensation for increased insurance costs outside of our medical benefits increased 9.33%, or about $23,000. That's due to our claims rates. We also have property and casualty insurance increase of about 5.04%, or about $9,000, and that was due largely to the addition of all of our solar fields. Special education also continues to be a large driving factor in our increases in spending. CDAL had an increase of 4.67%. We talked last time, as a reminder, that part of that was due to the wage increases that CDAL needed to be offering its staff. We've looked at, even internally, we've reviewed some of CDAL's staffing numbers and saw that there was obviously some opportunity for growth for the CDAL teachers there. We're happy to be able to support that. But we also are seeing increased tuition for outplaced students of about 20%. In this case, that's about $200,000. The good news, because I don't want to be all negative in the expense column, is we're seeing a decrease in electricity of about 22%. So we're projecting $105,000 in savings, which is nothing to sneeze at. Changes in revenue. So we were able to, in this budget, capture the $943,000 in additional tier funding. We are, again, Tier 1, which still labels us as one of the poorer districts in the state. Just a note about that for projecting into the future. We were at 64%. The cutoff is 65%. Last year, we were 61.9%. If I was a gambling man, which as a business manager I am not, I would say that most likely next year will be a Tier 2 district. So this might be the last of our large increases from the state. Operating levy revenue, we increased $742,000, or about 2.67%. The really fast answer for that and why that is more than CPI, because as a property tax extension limitation law district, PTEL district, we are capped on how much we can raise based upon CPI. We had a large $4 million increase in new properties added onto the district, and that was for the Station Village, forgetting the name of it, but it was all of the new townhouses that are just across St. Paul Street from the train station. Those came on our tax rolls in 2018, so that was the large increase in our CPI. We're also still projecting to receive SREC income and inverter rebates. Both of those are tied to our solar project. And we're also projecting, like I said, this was as of a month ago, we were projecting an increase in interest returns. I hope I didn't jinx us. It's looking more and more like the market is starting to go in a different direction as the Fed is promising to cut rates more and more, and we'll see less and less interest as a result of it. So as I said before, to just simplify these things down, I focused really in just on the operating funds, since that's where we have the most play, so to speak. Our levy in the operating funds is about 2.69%. That's higher than the 2.67% on the other slide because we have adjusted some of the levy in some of the other funds, like our working cash fund, to try to maximize as much as we can put into our ed fund and as much as we can put into our operating funds as possible. Other local revenue, we're projecting that 70% increase, which is wonderful, but it's a one-time increase. You'll notice it's about $1.1 million, which is fantastic as an increase in revenue, but then that money then, as we structured our debt certificates, is going to go right back out to pay principal on the loan that we borrowed for paying for the solar fields. So it's money in, but it's going right out again to try to save the district money on interest. Evidence-based funding, again, was a wonderful increase of the $943,000. I know Dr. Glickman, sorry if this is spoilers, but is talking about forming a committee with various stakeholders to try to address how can we best maximize those dollars to increase student outcomes in the district. So it may not sound like it, I know I'm very monotone, but we're very excited about that. Other state revenue, we're projecting a modest increase of about 3%, and federal, we're projecting an increase of about 3.64%. I want to emphasize that for those, a lot of that is going to be tied to things like increases in populations of our low-income students, or increases in English language learners, or increases in special education. The reason why I underscore that is a lot of that money ends up being reimbursements for expenses that we had the previous year. So as we have increased populations that have increased needs, that money then becomes reimbursements that we receive the following year. So we're seeing a big bump this year because we had to spend a lot more money last year. It would be great if that money didn't have those strings attached, but I just wanted to emphasize that as not as a revenue driver for the district as, oh, we have more money that we can now use. It's, no, we have more. That means we have even more costs associated with it. And unfortunately, it's not usually a one-to-one dollar reimbursement. So if it was, for example, a reimbursement that increased 3%, chances are the expenditure increased something like 6%. Moving on into the expenditures, we have the salary portion. We're projecting a 4.22% increase. This is not tied to raises or negotiations strictly. This is the big jump, or the reason why this number isn't tied to negotiations is due to the additional staff that we hired based upon the evidence-based funding from last year. So the quick refresher would be the behavior interventionists that we hired, 2 instructional coaches, 2 techs, the administrative assistant for the EL program, and the instructional coach for the EL program off the top of my head. So it was a lot of staff that we've added. We're very excited about the things that we've been able to do because of that new staff. We've seen some wonderful benefits already thanks to their hard work. Benefits, we're projecting that increase of 3.93%. This is tied again a lot to the medical benefits, as well as some changes in things like the TRS federal rate that we have to pay for any employees that we have on federal TRS. Purchase services, we're seeing an increase of about 3.83%. I realize a lot gets baked into that, but essentially a big piece of that is going to be things like our services for speech-language pathologists. We had the 6% increase in Durham transportation costs. So we're thankful that it was only 3.83% as overall for purchase services. The other note for purchase services would also be software that we purchased tied to our one-to-one curriculum. Supplies, we're at 5.77% increase, which again seems like a lot, but in light of the fact that we didn't have things budgeted for Chromebooks at the start of the year last year, and we didn't have things like the curriculum purchase planned at the beginning of the year, when you add several $100,000 for Chromebooks and the curriculum purchases, we're actually showing that we're trying to be as judicious as possible with our expenditure and supplies. So we were able to absorb curriculum and Chromebook purchases while trying to limit the amount of supplies purchased in other areas. For capital outlay, you'll see the large increase there. It is entirely related to the Meadowview roof. We've already started having conversations with our architect and also with performance services to get an idea of what kind of costs we'd be looking at overall. We have a pretty good picture, but now that we're moving forward with that, or looking to possibly move forward with that, we're trying to finalize some numbers to bring back to the board at a future board meeting. We're also at this point looking at doing solar on the Meadowview roof and considering the possibility for that. So we'll have more information in a future board meeting for that, but obviously I have to plan for the expenses now before we can even move forward. Tuition other, you'll see the large increase. And again, this is entirely related to the increase in special education tuition that we're experiencing as a district. Again, this was as of a month ago and before we received some of the news that we received about CEDAL, so I'm positive that we'll probably end up having to modify this line as well. The other big piece and the largest piece of this increase is going to be the solar debt payment. And then finally, we have some non-capitalized goods. This area increased slightly. I know it says 12%, but on the grand scheme of a $50 million budget, $10,000 is not a lot. But there were a lot of purchases that we need to make for furniture, for updating things like classrooms and libraries, etc. So overall, fiscal year 19, we were projecting this is the budget, just to emphasize, not the actual final numbers. We are working with our auditors currently to have the final numbers for you. But the budget for last year would have had a surplus of $131,000. This year, we're projecting a deficit of $928,000. The important part to note for that, though, is the big piece of that deficit is the Meadowview roof that we're projecting for the next summer. So without the capital project of the Meadowview roof, we're looking at about $178,000. Any questions? Yes.
So if we were in a grad class and our budget was a case study, how would people describe our stance on deficit spending? And what would be the opportunities and what would be the concerns?
That's a great question. I actually gave it a lot of thought this afternoon, and I thought I could probably teach an entire class on the budget of Grays Lake 46, how it's been built, how we've gotten to from where we were to where we are to where we plan on going in the future. So to talk specifically, though, because I believe your question is related entirely to what is our perspective on deficit spending. And I would say that there's two big points for deficit spending. One, there's going to be a need for deficit spending for any school district at any given time. We've been planning for years for this deficit, specifically related to the capital projects. So deficit can be a very dirty word, even for business managers, but this is finally the time of all that money that we'd been reserving for the large capital projects we knew we had. If I was answering a grad class, I would say deficits aren't always a bad thing. The second thing I would point out would be this is the nature of trying to capture a snapshot in time of expenditures. So when you're looking at even having to have this posted for 30 days and the amount of information that's changed just in the last 30 days, it makes it very difficult to try to make a very accurate down to the penny budget. Mm-hmm. I know I said 2, but I'm going to go for 3 anyway. The last thing I would probably point out as well is when you're looking at a deficit of about $178,000 and a budget of $50 million, you're talking fractions of percentages. So if this was a much larger deficit, I would say that would maybe be more cause for concern, but part of the good part about having this projected now is it helps all of us in the administration and all of the stakeholders have good conversations about, okay, is there ways that we can tighten our belts more? Are there ways that we can be better with our financials? So I'm actually excited for the opportunity. I know Dr. Glickman and I have had some conversations already about how do we start analyzing some of our expenditures in light of this projected deficit to make sure that it doesn't happen. Because just because we've budgeted for it doesn't mean that that's going to be the outcome of the rest of the year. So in some ways, I'd say that this is a blessing. It really forces at least me as a business manager to take some time to really reflect on, okay, is there ways that we can be better? Is there ways that we can create efficiencies? And I wouldn't say that we wouldn't do that in any other year, but it's hard to look at a number in parentheses on a screen and not be able to have conversations with the board and with other administrators throughout the year to say, we need to do something.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Yes.
So we always project our levy increase in the budget, and then that comes in December. And I know sometimes there is misunderstanding about how evidence-based funding affects our budget, and possible misunderstanding that leads automatically to us being able to take our foot off of the levy. So I'm wondering if you could give that talk track about what the purpose of evidence-based funding is related to our full budget, and how that short-term or long-term does or doesn't impact the levy. I think that would be really helpful.
Absolutely. I'm happy to address that now, and I know that also Dr. Glickman and I have had conversations, as well as several board members, about having as good as, if not better, tax levy presentation this fall as well. But to just briefly touch on the 2 points that you had there, the first thing I would say is the way that the laws are structured currently in the state of Illinois, unfortunately, we're under something called the Property Tax Extension Limitation Law, which means if we don't levy the maximum possible amount that we can levy, that money is left on the table forever. And we've done that as a district once already. I believe it was 8 years ago, I think, off the top of my head. And as a result, just over the last 8 years, we've seen a decrease of $20 million of potential revenue that the district could have right now, that we could be using on different things like not facing a deficit. So we've done that once, and we've seen just how hard that hurts, because Grays Lake went from a wonderful, relatively, we weren't so bad financially, let me put it that way. And now we're in a position where Grays Lake is a Tier 1 district that's mentioned among the likes of places like Zion and Waukegan. So in terms of financial resources, if we don't maximize our levy, we end up in an even worse position than we're already in. We're already paying for that decision. Evidence-based funding, there's kind of two pieces to that as well. For evidence-based funding, the whole point is they look at a district and say, what does it take, based upon your student population of English language learners, of special education students, of low-income students, and just the total number of students coming in through your doors every year? What does it take to give them the best possible education based upon a myriad of educational resources that have supported this, a myriad of educational studies? And they say, okay, based upon that, based upon what it is in Illinois, even all the way down to what is it in Lake County to provide that level of education, this is how much money you would need. So when I say we're a Tier 1 district, that means the state came in and said, you need X amount of dollars to be able to educate these students adequately and equitably every single year. And when I say 64%, that means they acknowledge that we only have 64% of the resources we need to give kids the best possible education. So that first piece is, when we get additional money from the state, it's not a great chance to then let off the pedal, as you said, for the tax levy. It's really, we've got to be doing more to try to help these increasing populations with increased needs. Even when as we talk about English language learners, the traditional thought is, oh, well, you mean Spanish. We're seeing Russian, we're seeing Serbian. We've seen an increase of over 100% in the number of languages spoken in our district at home. The needs are just growing, and the complexity of those needs, I think I don't need to say anything more from Ms. Lorenzo behind you, of even the complexity of the needs of the students that we do have as medicine advances and as we become aware of more issues that keep students from being the best that they could possibly be, and our obligation, both ethically and legally, to give them an equitable education. So, all that to say, we don't have what we need, and we still need more. And the last piece about evidence-based funding I wanted to mention is there is a property tax relief grant that they offer. Anytime the state provides more than $300 million in additional funding, anything over that $300 million mark goes into a property tax relief grant. That's something we applied for last year, and unfortunately we were not a top in terms of need. They rate it based upon a variety of factors, such as whether you're a unit district or an elementary district or a high school district, and your property tax rate, et.cetera. I would have thought for sure we would be in the top, but we weren't. Fortunately for our taxpayers, though, the high school district was one of the top vote getters, or one of the top qualificant claimants. You know what I'm saying. I apologize. So our taxpayers are going to be seeing a decrease in their taxes because of it. So evidence-based funding is a wonderful thing, and it is trying to do in some areas things to kind of ease the property tax burden. Unfortunately, we just haven't seen that translate down to us yet.
Thank you, John. That was helpful.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Do you want me to go back? All right, well, thank you guys very much.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John. Okay, are there any public comments or questions for the agenda or for the budget hearing? That's the next piece on the agenda. Okay, that's going to, could I get a motion to adjourn the budget hearing portion of the meeting?
Moved. Second.
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you. That adjourns the budget hearing. Gonna go right into the, all right, we'll go right in. Go right in. Okay, we're gonna call the regular Board of Education meeting to order at this moment with roll call, please. Here.
Braden,
Here.
LaCroy,
Here.
Mackey,
Here.
Miller,
Here.
Strack.
Still here. Great. That establishes a quorum. Do we want to do the pledge again, or do we? All right, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance again. Thank you. Okay, could I have a motion to approve the agenda for the regular board meeting, please?
Second.
Okay.
Miller,
Aye.
Strack,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Mackey.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Agenda is approved. We have the opening for public comments at this time. Is there anything on the list? Okay, and we have the first item of business is the presentation for operations and maintenance summer projects slideshow. Hand that over to Keith. Move that way, yeah.
Good evening, everybody. How are you today? We're here to talk about summer projects. This is something new that we're going to start trying to do more of when we do laser projects. This year we got several of them throughout the district. This year we did middle school. We ground off the 3 inches of asphalt and we applied 3 inches of new asphalt. While doing that, we changed the slope for the handicap parking in the front of the parking lot. From a 4-inch slope to a 1-inch slope, now we're 3/8 compliant. We seal coated and striped around the back, and restriped for the kitchen staff. Made it easier for trucks to get in and out around the back of the school. We added the privacy rooms this year for the girls' locker room. Last year we did boys. Now we have 2 nice size privacy rooms for people to change in both bathrooms, both locker rooms. That's how we did it here in the middle school. Purging was our other big project for asphalt. We ground down to the sub base, put in a drain on the north end down by that bus, which wasn't there before, a surface drain. And we added finger drains across the whole parking lot because it's so big as far as keeping the water away from or going to the drain. We did several curb repairs and sidewalk replacements as far as slabs of sidewalk that were needed. What's up here? We did finally get the path in for the pre-K. There's some flaw over there. Sounds like they're very happy with it. They like putting the bicycles up and down it. So we did get that project completed this year. Then we're going to move over to Woodview. No, where's Woodview?
That's Woodview.
There's Woodview, so I'll go back one. Woodview, we did install the mats, as you can see, under the swings. These are for, we're having issues with the kids kicking the mulch out all the time. And then we get into the hazard of not having fall protection. So we're trying these. This is something reasonably new out on the market. I'm hesitant to do the rest of the other 3 schools yet. So we see if it becomes a trip hazard as they kick it all out and we try to keep putting it under. So instead of investing in that, we're this is our trial run. And thanks to Mrs. Mack for finding them for us. And then we installed the mulch, as you can see. The other things we did at Woodview, obviously you guys know it was carpeting. Oops, they're all. Yeah. We did the carpeting in the learning center, that's in the upper right side and bottom right, I should say. And we ended up redoing the main office. What was also entailed in that job is in the learning center or library, is we took out all the metal shelves that were around the units, the heating units, and then we had to reinstall a wood to protect the heating pipes that were running through the walls. So we did that. That was another project over there. Let's see. Next one is Fredericks. That was another biggie on our list. There we go. I apologize. There's Fredericks. We finally got it seal coated and restriped. It's working great. We can hold, I don't know, other than our water issue with the buses, we've been able to hold all the cars that used to sit on 83 and on Fredericks Road. It was a great project. It worked well. Finally got the weather to get it done. As far as pictures, we didn't go any further because we did some curb repair and sidewalk repair at Park. Also some asphalt patching at Park. Woodview, Avon, and Meadowview, we did crack filling and restriping. And that was pretty much our summer project.
The one thing I would just add for this is, afraid having a laser pointer. We've also added.
Oh yeah, we did modify the stripes.
Since this picture was taken, we've gotten some wonderful feedback from the staff that were administering the afternoon releases. They asked for a crossway here, crosswalk. So we got that recently striped in. They've also asked for, it's not pictured here, but in the loop, it was just one lane and that was causing a backup. We've split the end of the loop into 2 lanes, so people turning left and people turning right, and that's kind of increased the flow and the ease of flow through our Circle Drive as well. So really also wanted to thank publicly the Frederick administration and the Frederick staff who are out there saying this is a wonderful thing, but here's a couple little tweaks that you guys could do to make this even better. So we love little pieces like that, to take the time to say, hey, how can we make this even better? So we took their advice seriously and we've made those upgrades as well.
If you guys find this information useful, next year I'll put one together and I'll try to do my best to get before pictures and then after pictures. So let me know if you want it next year. We'll be happy to do it. It'll be a biggie because it'll be Meadowview's roof. So if we can get Leslie and Joe to run the drone across it as they're tearing it apart and then putting it back together, and hopefully with solar on it, I think it'll be a really cool presentation. And I'm sure we'll have some other big projects that pop up as we usually do at this site this week.
Don't say that.
Well, thank you very much. Any questions?
I think the answer to your question is yes, it would be helpful and useful.
Okay.
And looking forward to after sounds good.
Yeah, well, at least you see what you've done and where the money's gone, so at least you got an idea of what you're fisting with.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
And thank you for giving John an opportunity to use his laser pointer.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. There's moments, though. You're in on a Saturday, and you might be in late, but yeah, for the most part.
Thank you, Keith. Okay, next item on the agenda is board reports. Open the floor to any board member who has anything to share. I do too, but go ahead, yeah.
So the community engagement plan, I sent it to Lynn and also to Jim to send to you guys to take a look at, in the hopes that by the late October meeting we can decide if it's the right direction, have any tweaks or anything. I would love to know. And then also the green package, I brought that up a few weeks ago, that Grace Lake, the village, is trying to get going. If you remember, it's the food composting project. They need a little over 60 more households to indicate their interest. So if you guys are interested, I have one extra form. And is there some way that we could, if it's okay with everyone, just remind the buildings that those are available?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We have to-
I'm assuming that works. Okay.
Yeah, this is the one.
Okay, thank you.
Equity.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll share about CEDAL.
Oh, okay, great. So let's see, Jim and Stephen and Lynn and I attended an excellent presentation on equity, really the impact of policy quite a bit on equity at Stevenson High School. And Lynn, you may have this in your, Lynn went for the whole day. And then board members got to join for 2 hours. And the person who presented is the Dean of Equity at Cal Lutheran, but was previously a longtime teacher and principal and superintendent in Ventura schools in California. Anyway, she did a really nice job just laying out unintentional places where we create inequities through policy, and it was really helpful. There were a few where I felt really proud that we've already nailed that and are aware of it and are working to make sure that that's not the case here. And there were a few that were new to me that I said, oh, we should probably talk about that. So more to come, I think, but it was an excellent presentation, very informative, and just super practical in uncovering that, like when you look at things from that lens, how you can see things a little differently. So that was very helpful, and thank you for the invite.
So I've got something to share with CEDAL. Probably if you're a reader of the newspaper, the Daily Herald, the executive board enacted a freeze in placements at CEDAL to assist the district in dealing with the challenge of the short staffing issues over there. So that just happened this week, and that will be in place as long as it takes until the staffing shortage is eased. The next executive board meeting is in a month, and so I'll have an update later in October as to how that is going. But just wanted to keep you up to speed on that. Thank you.
How does that affect the member schools?
So the district, CEDAL, will work individually with each member school to determine how to bring services to students that are not placed in the district. So it's a temporary process until they start re-engaging the placements. Other board reports? Okay, thank you.
Sure. I'll start by talking about EBM funding, also known as EBF funding, depending on your mood of the day. As you know, John already talked about it during our budget hearing, so you've already gotten the review that we are still in Tier 1, but we think probably just for this one last year, we are considered 64% funded, and the cutoff for being in Tier 1 is 65%. And that this year's Tier 1 funding brought our district an additional $943,822. A spending plan is due to the state at the end of this month, and the state acknowledges that this is just a plan and that input and plans may change. So our cabinet has already gathered, and we've talked about this a little bit at this table, we've brainstormed a list of ideas of things that could meet the 27 elements the state puts out as indicators of success for a school district. We've done a prioritizing activity. Actually, Ms. Lorenzo led us through an activity. Thank you for that. So that we could be thinking about what our priorities are. That was enough information for us to be ready to submit data to the state, and we're still working on that. But we know that that doesn't mean we've made decisions. It just means we, began that process. So also, as John mentioned, we are putting a group together. We've invited a wide variety of stakeholders. So it's 2 certified staff members from every one of our schools, building administrators, central office administrators, and a couple of board members as possible to come together. That meeting is scheduled a week from Friday in the afternoon. And the purpose of that meeting is really for people to give input, again, on what is it that we think will most support our students when it comes to utilizing those funds. So, and in addition, along with the 2 certified staff members, we've also invited separately a representative from our teachers union and a representative from our PSRP leadership as well. A brief review of the agenda that we are still building a bit is that we'll begin with reviewing our EBF funding purposes along with the past expenditures that we've made regarding the use of those funds. We will share that brainstormed list with our stakeholders. We'll give our stakeholders an opportunity to add more to that list. We will spend some time talking about those items that are possibilities for us, and then we'll do a prioritizing activity with the group. And again, the purpose will be to give input as we move forward. Moving on, as you know, we had our GMS 50th anniversary since the last time we were together. GMS enjoyed collaboration with the Grays Lake Historical Society and the Lions Club while hosting this celebration alongside the Lions Club annual steer roast. Exhibits included memorabilia displayed by the Grays Lake Historic Society, fabulous GMS T-shirt and yearbook displays, yearbooks through the years, 4 separate and really very engaging videos created by Leslie Walker, an art installation created by the GMS art teacher and students. There were GMS students who led people through the school who wanted to have a tour, and visitors included people who were former students, former families, and some teachers, people who had either retired or moved into other districts and came back and toured the school. So I got to be with some of them as they walked around and said, "That was my classroom," and I heard a lot of old stories, so that was a lot of fun. Excuse me, I'm going to, as I choke, pass it on to Paul to talk about our late start.
So last week on the 11th was our first late start of the school year. The first one typically in our school district is one for teachers to work on goal setting and gathering information about their students in their classes. So the majority of teachers were working on that. And some of our teachers who don't necessarily have a homeroom or work specifically with students about goal setting still had their job-alike meetings. I had a group, Dr. Glickman had a group, Mr. Walk had a group. And so we had some small groups going on. I also want to comment that Mrs. Walker also was able to have a meeting with all of the building secretaries, which I believe turned out to be well received and wanting to continue that. So as a time, it's really hard to pull the building secretaries because they're always needed. And so somebody was in the office during the time, and then the other one was able to come to the meeting, and I think that was a great use of time on Late Start. So Late Start is always productive use of time. Specifically, this one, as I said, was mostly building-based. So teams or individual teachers were able to talk. They looked at the student information exchange documents that had been shared with parents, and to be able to look at some of the past data about the students. So that was a good productive use of time. The other topic that I wanted to share with you, just to give you a little bit of information, a small group of us in the spring were able to begin having dialogue with the president of the College of Lake County. And she brought a group of other administrators to come and meet with us for the first time. And then just recently, a small group of us again went to CLC because the College of Lake County is very interested in working in partnership with us. They're excited to think about a first-time opportunity for a community college to actually partner with a K-8 school district because they really do see that we're the foundation of college and career readiness. And so to help our students understand that college and career are possible, and they'd like to be a conduit to help us with all those things. So I think it's really exciting. There are opportunities for us to support the business office potentially with some internships. There are some opportunities we want to continue with having nursing students come in and help us in the health clerk office. We have many opportunities. I'm looking at Dr. Diaz. They're very interested in participating with our BPAC. They would like to host one of the meetings and support us in our endeavors with BPAC. Sounds really exciting to me. We also brainstormed a whole litany of ideas because they have a goal for all of their staff to have volunteer opportunities, and they would like to find opportunities in our school district that could support us, including staff who speak another language who might be able to support some of our students. But also some of their expertise. So maybe if there's things that we need to boost the information in our own teacher background, for example, in science topics, they might be able to support sending a professor to work with our staff. Right now, the opportunities are wide, and so I'm very excited about this opportunity, but because I think it would benefit all of our students. There is a hope or a desire potentially to finalize it over the next few weeks, potentially even with a resolution from this board, if you're interested in willing, to show our commitment to the work of a partnership with the College of Lake County. So to me, it's very exciting. Mr. Welk has been participating, the people sitting here, and Dr. Diaz has been participating, and Dr. Glickman, of course, as well, have been helping us facilitate some of those things too. So I just wanted to share that it's been some of the work that we're doing as a district to broaden our partnerships, which is really amazing. They forgot, or they didn't really realize how close we physically are to the College of Lake County. And so it really is not that far away about potentially bringing students. So our list is long of things that we want to investigate. So I think it's really good.
Thanks, Paul. All right, I'm going to invite Dr. Diaz to say a few words about some changes in names.
Okay. I think this is working. Yes. Yay. Okay, so very quickly, we learned last week that the Division of English Learners at the state level has changed their name. So they were DEL, Division of English Learners, and now they're the Department of Multilingual Services, DMS. They've also changed the name of the students that we service from English learners or learners to EBs for emergent bilinguals. Okay. The state changed the terminology because they feel that it better reflects the vision for the multilingual communities. Along with that change is the person who is in charge of the entire department has moved to Vida Español. So his name is Samuel Aguirre. His position is now open, so that we are looking to find a new person at the state level who will oversee all 309 districts who have active EB departments.
Thank you. It'll take a while for people to get used to the new words, but we'll keep reminding each other. All right, I was going to talk for a moment about our equity training that a few of us attended last week. I'll just comment again that it was a really moving training. Paul and I were able to be there during the day, and so what the board saw in 2 hours, we had kind of an expanded experience over about 6 hours during the day, and really it was very moving to see this this former superintendent talk about the experiences that her school district went through in really, truly diving deeply into how to best serve the needs of the students. She has a book out, actually several books. We've purchased it and started reading it, and purchased a few for a few other folks as well. So much for us to continue to learn and discuss together. And last but not least, just a reminder about Barn Fest, which is coming up this weekend. It's this Saturday night from 6 to 10 at the Lake County Fairgrounds. This is an adult-only fundraiser for Foundation 46. I do want to read part of the About Us statement that's on the District 46 website in case anyone is unfamiliar with their purpose. So on their website it says, Foundation 46 is a collective response across the entire D46 community to seek solutions to the funding challenges faced by our schools. We are propelled by what is possible and choose to rally around teachers, their administrators, and our kids. It's a nice, powerful statement, so I thought it'd be worth listening to. We can all still purchase tickets. They're $35 online. You can go to our website, and there's a link there to the foundation. They're also $30 per person with a group of 6 or more. $40 at the door. There's going to be axe throwing, just saying. Our schools have been competing with each other about bringing a whole bunch of staff members to the event. Currently, or last I heard, we had Frederick had 81 staff members, GMS at 76, and Woodview at 55. I know that the foundation is going to be choosing their winning staff related to ratios as well, because we know that there are some schools with bigger staffs than others, so leave it to the foundation to figure that out. And two last reminders that a newbie like me would not have known if she had not read it on the website, so I'm just sharing it out. Wear closed-toe shoes in the barn and bring cash, because you can pay for games, raffle tickets, and auction items with a credit card, but beverages must be purchased with cash only. So that's the information for now. That's the end of my superintendent report.
So thank you, Dr. Mugman.
Absolutely.
Do we have any committee reports tonight?
We do not.
think so.
Can I stop for a second and
Yeah.
just ask you a clarifying question
Sure.
about the EBF report that's due?
Not about Barnfest, no?
I know, I've been to
Okay.
Barnfest, I know.
Okay.
But do you have-
Curious about the axe throwing. though.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
And what kind of insurance they're having to carry for that.
Yes.
So the report due to the state, that's statutorily required, is that
Correct.
And this is the first time we've had to do it?
No, it was also last year and probably the year before also had to be turned into the state.
The questions were significantly different.
Okay, yeah. We can talk
So
about
last
that.
year was the first year that we had to submit it. The questions last year were much more of, for lack of a better term, just check boxes. Here's this, are you planning on spending the money on this, not on this, etc. They've dramatically overhauled it for year 2. This year it actually includes information about dollars spent in specific areas, things like special education,
But
EB
last year's
students.
money. Last year's money,
Correct.
right? Yeah.
So the report we're doing soon is for the money we received for last fiscal year.
As well as planning for what we're doing in the year to come. So it's kind of a look back, what have you done, as well as what are you planning on doing in the future year.
So I'm going to jump in because I confused the matter. So it's a plan for what we're going to do with the new money. But what the state will sometimes do is say, here's a report, it's about this, but it's also about this. So the report that we thought we were doing, which was just a plan moving forward, also included how did you spend all of your money last year?
And the
Two
questionnaire or the nature of the reporting, is it tied into the 27 elements or 24 elements or how many ever? They're basically asking us to address the spending plan as it relates to those elements, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So now that you've received this money, how are you planning, what areas or what gaps are you planning, gaps in equity or adequacy are you planning on addressing in the upcoming year?
Thank you, that helps.
Any other questions?
Okay. All right, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda, which also includes the addendum to the personnel report.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Braden,
Aye.
Mackey,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Strack,
Aye.
Miller, Mack.
Aye. Okay, motion approved. Next on our list under action items is motion to approve the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget. I entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. Any additional questions or comments? Okay.
Miller, Mack,
Aye.
Mackey,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Strack.
Aye. Okay, motion approved. Thank you. Next on the action item, a motion to approve the superintendent goals as written. We all received copies of those. May I have a motion? So moved.
Second.
Any questions, comments?
With a track single-use item, just to get an idea of how much they're spending on stuff that we're potentially spending on. I don't know if that's typical, but.
I'm not sure what I understand. I'm not, is this relation to the superintendent goals
It
or
is,
something else?
Yeah, I can write down with them, but there's, just in general, looking at efficiencies,
Okay.
is it possible to track, how difficult would it be to track single-use items for instructional? So like buttons or, I don't know
Yeah.
exactly what they might be. Is that-
So that, I'm not sure if this will answer your question or not, so let me know. The goal that Christy is referring to, I'm actually just going to read it aloud for the purpose of this conversation. It's a 1-year goal, and it says, assess organization for opportunities to improve systems and efficiencies district-wide. initiate new systems and efficiencies as appropriate and plan for future system updates. Now, first of all, I want to comment that although it's written as a one-year goal, that doesn't mean that after 1 year I will be done with that, right? But the genesis for that goal is not necessarily about efficiencies the way that John is necessarily talking about them when he's talking about looking at how we're spending our money and how we can do it more efficiently. It's really a even further pulled back view of that, and all of our systems throughout the district, what we're doing, how we might be doing those things differently, where our systems we could build some more infrastructure, so it's much more pulled back than the kinds of efficiencies that John's talking about. Does that help? Yeah? Okay, sure. You're welcome.
Other questions, comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Go ahead.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Braden. Aye. Strack,
Aye.
Miller. Aye. Mack,
Aye.
Mackey.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Motion approved. We also have on the action items a motion to approve the assistant superintendent goals as shared with us in the board packet. Can I have a motion?
Just a point of, are we allowed to vote on that in this meeting since it wasn't brought up in our last meeting, or do we have to wait one meeting before we can vote? Just as a clarification.
Yeah, I think it has been the habit of our board to have that 2-meeting process, but it's not a requirement in the Open Meetings Act.
Okay.
I think it's been a board agreement in the past.
Okay.
I don't think it's a.
I mean, certainly if you want to.
No, that's not. I just want to make sure we weren't.
And I guess, and these goals actually were developed between Paul and Ellen Carell last year. So they've been around for a little while.
Okay, need a motion? Go ahead.
Strack,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Braden. Aye. LaCroy,
Aye.
Miller. Aye. Mackey.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Motion approved. I think that finishes the action items. It does not appear that we have any unfinished business or any new business. So we are on to topics for future agenda items.
Well, first of all, just a reminder to everyone that our October 2nd meeting is not a regular meeting, it's a special meeting. We'll open the meeting, but then go, I believe, directly into closed session to do our board workshop with our IASB facilitator. So board members, I've already let our administrators know they have the night off because it doesn't really make sense for them to sign on in and sign out. And that meeting will be over at the district office. And 6:30, yeah. Mm-hmm. So October 16th, which will be our next regular meeting, the board had asked for a report regarding the sustainability measures that we've used in our district. John had already shared when he was talking about the budget, back to the word efficiencies, that we've had regarding our solar panels, but we know that there are other things that our school district has done under the heading of sustainability. So Keith and I talked very briefly about doing a presentation at the meeting on the 16th. We're still on, yeah, he's not looking at me, so, okay, good. Yeah, he's not looking at me like I'm not gonna do it. No, okay, so good. So we'll have that on the 16th. We'll have a first reading on our policies, on new policies, and an update on the Community Engagement Committee. That's all I have.
Great. Any other comments? Okay, public comments. Open for public comments. Any others? Did you talk about the new truck?
So what we have discussed in the past was trying to update our aging fleet of vehicles. We have several vehicles that I believe, if not are from the 90s, then are at least in the early 2000s. Last year we've replaced one of those vehicles. We're working on collecting data on auctions, et cetera. So we're looking forward to, or we're looking towards possibly renewing another vehicle in our fleet and replacing one of the vehicles with a newer vehicle. So that'll be a discussion that we'd like to bring up at the next board meeting.
I seem to remember when we talked about this, I think it was in the fall, we talked about trying to get on a more regular schedule like we do the maintenance at the buildings, right? As a more robust schedule of refreshing these trucks been finalized or worked on at all?
Not at this point,
Okay. Maybe
but that
that's-
is something that we're trying to work on and have ready for the next board meeting.
How many vehicles are there district-wide-ish?
Love it. There's 3 vans, 7 small trucks. I think there's 11.
That gives me a good idea. Could be 12, could be 10.
No, it's 11.
It's 11.
Sometimes less, depending upon vehicle wear and tear.
But they are, I mean, we have a 2000 right now that we're still using, a couple of 2002s and a 2004 or 5, I think. And the maintenance for the city power, we just try to put together.
That'll be at the next board meeting, yeah? Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments, public comments, anything else? Do we have a closed session?
You do that?
We do not have a closed session. All right. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Okay.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Mackey,
Aye.
Miller. Aye. Mack,
Aye?
Strack,
Aye.
Brady. Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.